against what she's termed willful distractions that are likely to accompany the release of the final state of capture report. In an op-ed, she opines that the news of the arrest of the Gupta brothers in Dubai for extradition purposes has been drowned out by the news of the alleged housebreaking and robbery at President Cyril Ramaphosa's farm. Advocate Madonsela points out that while the president must answer through the law enforcement system and that the story is important, the narrative appears to be clouding attention on state capture accountability. Adv Thuli Madonsela is the Law Trust Chair in Social Justice Research at Stellenbosch University and founder of the Thuma Foundation, and joins me now. Advocate, good evening. We appreciate your time. Thank you very much. Why and by whom do you believe the South African public is being distracted?
Good evening, Iman and viewers. Thank you for the privilege. Firstly, just to start by saying it is important that all news are reported. We count on the media to activate social accountability, and therefore I'm not suggesting that no coverage should be given to any matter, including that of the president's alleged money. But I do get a sense that at this stage, those who are implicated in state capture have been dictating the public narrative, and everywhere you turn, we are talking about Phala, and very little is being discussed about the arrest of the Guptas. And why is it important that we should discuss the arrest of the Guptas? The court of public opinion is as important as the normal courts of law because it drums up social accountability, which gets everyone involved in ensuring that there's no impunity.
The problem, Advocate, is depending on who you ask, each side will claim that the other is involved in the art of distraction from their issue. We have the Justice Minister slamming claims that the arrest of the Guptas was orchestrated to divert attention from the so-called Farmgate scandal. The public has to be well informed to ensure they ultimately get answered on all and every issue that pertains to the abuse of position. How do we prioritize what gets our attention first, and which is the biggest battle to be fought first?
Well, from a public accountability point of view, both issues are important, but I must indicate that the issue of the Guptas has multiple accountability issues that the average person should be concerned about. Regarding which is a distraction, are you aware that the Guptas were arrested on the 2nd of June? And that this sudden conscience of Mr. Frazier happened on the 1st of June. And normally when people are going to be arrested, they may be informed they're about to be arrested, or even the process of arrest may be a long process. And therefore, it's very difficult to believe that Mr. Frazier didn't know that the Guptas were going to be arrested on the 2nd, or were in the process of being arrested.
So, and this is, a portion of the discourse, Advocate Madonsela, that's being, that is being captured, I think, in places like social media. Again, when you talk about people having a vested interest in distracting the South African public, you're placing him right there in the middle of that project.
Well, certainly. Well, I mean, Mr. Frazier is one of those people that are implicated in state capture. Again, I'm not suggesting that he himself is responsible for the distraction. In the article, I talk about the public needing to be aware that as we move into Accountability Day on state capture, there'll be a lot of dead kids that will be thrown. And I give examples of whenever I was about to come with a big story or to release an important report, the New Age, which was co-owned by the president's son, and the Guptas would come with a big story, front page, that tries to distract. And usually it succeeded because at that stage, people didn't know that the New Age was co-owned by President Zuma's son and the Guptas. And ANN7, which was also co-owned by the president's son and the New Age, would do the same. But we also now know this via the state capture investigation that the president himself had played some role in the establishment of these news outlets. So mine is simply to alert the public that don't allow your public narrative to be swayed by people who have an interest in evading accountability. Yes, let's discuss all issues, but I would love South Africans to realize how important the issue of state capture is. It's not just about money. It's about the theft of democracy. It's about the hijacking of our democracy. And that should concern everyone, including Ekoko Dlamini in Tsofimvab.
Yeah, I was actually you took the words out of my mouth with that question there around, this idea that you present about these dead cats and the distraction that they pose. But would you agree, Advocate, that we, as South Africans, are in an invidious position of having to deal with the problems of accountability from multiple quarters simultaneously? The story about the truth of what happened at the Phala farm deals with the highest office in the land. The possibility of multiple infractions exists that threaten the credibility of our president and his conduct. And at the same time, as you have eloquently pointed out, the issues around the Gupta pivot on the very bedrock of our democracy and the need for accountability in making sure, as you also write further in your article, there isn't a reloading of another state capture event in South Africa.
Absolutely. Firstly, you're right that both are important, but what frightens me is the possibility that we may be facing a much more serious capture of the state that's not targeting government contracts. That's just going to the heart of the law enforcement agencies. And it's going to be extremely important that the average South African remains vigilant. And again, I'm not saying we shouldn't cast an eye on what the president, employee number one of South Africa Incorporated, is doing. But even then, we should be aware of distortions. For example, parliamentarians kept saying he's been charged. He has not been charged. He has been reported to the police, and those are two different things. Secondly, there's a narrative that says he's responsible for money laundering. Nothing has been put forward by Mr. Frazier that suggests that there was money laundering. Because money laundering is when money obtained through a dirty process is cleaned up through a legitimate process and comes out on the other hand looking clean. At this stage, all we know is that there was money under a couch or something like that, which of course looks suspicious. But beyond that, we don't know anything. Then there's suggestion that the president may or may not have been involved in illicit law enforcement. In this particular case, I was protected by protectors. Whenever things happened at my house, the people I would report to are the protectors. So it's not 100% sure that once the protectors have taken over the matter, I would be involved in what happens thereafter. So that's why I agree with one of the persons that was interviewed in the inset earlier, that let's hear from law enforcement what exactly happened and what was the role of the president in this regard, beyond just owning the farm.
All right, I'm not sure where that audio suddenly crept in from, but I think what you're asking for is supreme focus in areas where you use the word distortion or where there can be a lot of hubris created around certain things, is to be doggedly focused on what the facts of the matter are. And I think that is a challenge, not only on these two issues that you raised in your op-ed, but also just, as a commentary on society in general and on how we formulate our opinions and whether we outsource our opinions to other people. On a separate issue, Advocate, which set the conversation on fire this week, was the suggestion you made that South Africa follow Kenya in requiring degrees for senior public appointments like premiers, MECs, ministers, MPs and presidents. And I think this is important, especially in a context where accountability is low and, the ability to execute your task seems to also be very, very low. What type of degree did you have in mind?
Well, it can be any degree, but a degree that allows a person to have evolved or developed conceptual skills. And I do know there that not everyone agrees with me. For example, somebody from the Rivonia circle was one of the ones who fired the first shot to say not everyone has an opportunity to be educated. But I just think that is a bit of a short-sighted response, because not everyone has an opportunity to be educated. We don't reward everyone by making them managers simply because we want to equalize the opportunity to be managers. So it's the same thing when it comes to governing. Governing is both a right and a skill. And we need to strike a balance between the space we create for people to exercise this right to govern and the reality of making sure that those who govern are capable of governing. And of course, those who are not educated, one councillor that I worked with during the social justice walk from Stellenbosch University to Pinel was that in local government, you could have space for people who don't have degrees to go in, but with a requirement that within their first year or two of being councillors, they must get some kind of a certificate or diploma that enables them to have the conceptual skills to govern within the complexity of a modern society.
And I guess, an important tenet of that education would be around executive training and ethics, ostensibly. But on this question, how do you see that practically playing out in South Africa, where the quality of our education is questionable, not accessible to many in terms of, when we think about our high dropout rate and the systemic inequalities? It will be a long time before we get that right. And we do need to be, governed in the meantime.
We still have to be governed, but we can't equalize in competence. We can't say just because not everyone can cross the threshold of getting the right education and governing properly, then we have to be governed by people who don't have a clue. I mean, we were talking as we were doing the social justice walk about how some people in parliament, because they can't engage, they just come with funny ways of berating each other, debasing each other. But the reality is that the conversation is far beyond the conceptual skills. So from where I'm standing, yes, there aren't enough equal opportunities, and some aspects of our education are not good enough for certain things. But there's enough in our education system to produce people that can govern at local government, provincial government, national government. And you must recall that in my article, I was only saying those who occupy executive positions should have some degree. The only other people that I said should have a degree are people in parliament. Law is very complex, good people. To have people who can barely interpret any document, designing your laws and enforcing the laws is asking for failure.
Advocate Thuli Madonsela, on that note, we thank you for your time. Appreciate it. Advocate Madonsela is the Law Trust Chair of Social Justice Research at Stellenbosch University and the founder of the Thuma Foundation.